Welcome to another episode of Relatively Famous, where I, Chip White, interview relatives of famous people. My famous relative is Vanna White from the TV show Wheel of Fortune. She's my sister, hence the podcast, and why I talk to relatives of famous people. I want to find out what their life is like. Today, this is going to be cool. I have the granddaughter of a cowboy western hero, Roy Rogers and Dale Evans' granddaughter, Julie Rogers Pomilia. And it's going to be fun. I'm going to love talking to her. And I want to, before we jump into that, and we're talking about family, let's talk about the perfect family vacation at visitmyrtlebeach.com. That's visitmyrtlebeach.com. My hometown area where, I have friends that ride horses there, so there are horses at the beach. It's a beautiful beach. There's so much fun stuff to do. There's golf, scuba diving, restaurants with amazing seafood. And if you happen to travel with an autistic or sensory sensitive traveler, you can learn more about that at Traveling the Spectrum on Peacock. And you can also learn about how Myrtle Beach really caters and the establishments that cater to that at visitmyrtlebeach.com. Now, let's welcome Roy Rogers and Dale Evans' granddaughter, Julie.
Relatively Famous Podcast with Chip White.
Julie, welcome to Relatively Famous.
Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here.
Now, we talked a little bit on the phone, and we talked a little bit about the fact that you are working hard to really keep your grandparents' memory alive. That, sadly, Westerns aren't the fun singing cowboy that they used to be. And I loved your grandfather and your grandmother. I love the way that the costuming that they wore. And I've noticed in some photos you sent that you have some of the original outfit or shirts, like with the beads and the fringe and just the beautiful artwork that they were.
Yeah, I do. I never dreamed I would end up with them. But when our family had to auction everything off at Christie's in New York City, when we took the museum apart and we were done with it, somebody bought it for me and gave it to me. So it's very special. It's one of Grandpa's shirts that he wore a lot. And right now, it happens to be down in the Hollywood Museum off Highland and Hollywood Boulevard, and this really nice display that they have. But otherwise, yeah, I have several of his outfits and several of hers. Hers were different, though. She always wanted to give me things. She always wanted to go in her closet and say, "Oh, I have the best thing to give you. I think it would just look fabulous on you." And I'm thinking, no, don't give me anything else, because it usually didn't really look fabulous on me. But I graciously accepted everything she gave me, and I'm glad today because I have a lot of her clothes.
Yeah, it's funny that people, as grandparents especially, like, oh, you'll love this, and the thing, you did the right thing. It's like graciously accept it and not hurt feelings. And if it, sometimes you might go back and put it and go, you know what, that actually is kind of cool. I got that on now.
You know what? That's exactly what happened, because I put them right away into my Halloween costume box, and just kind of knew where they were, and I saved it for years, her stuff. And then as I got older, how so often it happens, you get more sentimental and things mean more to you, and you're not sure why, but they just do. And I started taking them out and then noticing that I was seeing photos or videos of her, like on a Perry Como TV show or some Dinah Shore. And I started noticing that those were the same outfits that were in my Halloween box. So I started pulling them out and hanging them up, and then eventually showing them and sharing them with people. So, yeah, and I wear them.
Go ahead.
No, I wear them sometimes. And yeah, it's fun now.
And I want to go back and reiterate, your grandparents were Roy Rogers and Dale Evans. And for younger generation, I urge you to Google and go back and look up Roy Rogers movies, the TV shows that he and Dale. It was a time when there was the good cowboy and the bad cowboy. I mean, there was a distinct difference, and the good cowboy was always dressed to the nines, got the big white hat on, the beautiful horse. I mean, it was a time where, I hate to say kids today will say, oh, that's so cheesy, but the stories were about kind of morals. It's like, look,
Right.
you know,
Right.
what?
Well, he knew that his audience were mainly, a lot of anyway, young children, and they wanted to be a good example. They love children. That's why they had 9. And they felt like it was one of the important aspects of their deal, that they are good examples.
Okay, 9 children.
Yeah.
Of the 9, who were your parents?
Okay. Yeah, 9. That's a lot of laundry, isn't it?
Yes.
My dad was the oldest of the Rogers siblings. My grandma, and nobody, by the way, I need to preface this with, none of us are related to each other, blood related, except for 2. And that's because it's a yours, mine, ours. We adopted, we fostered, they just kept adding children to their family. And my dad my grandma was 15 when she had him. So she was a very young grandma. And she was married. He left her soon afterwards. So by 17, she was divorced with a young son. And so her life kind of went through ups and downs. And she kind of made a mess of things with 2 more husbands. And Grandpa, on the other end, he was married once and then was married the second time and had 2 children that were biological of his. So really, there's only 3 that are biological. And then the 4th one that was actually between the 2 of them, the only child that Roy and Dale had together that was biological between them was Robin, and she was born with Down syndrome and lots of heart problems, and she passed away a couple days before she turned 2.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, they and then they just started adopting more because they just had a heart for children, and their friends would always tease them. You always come home from an orphanage visit or a children's hospital with another child, like some people come home with puppies. It's like, well, we love kids. So I had an aunt from Korea. I have an aunt that is Native American. I had an aunt that was Scottish, and I had an uncle with special needs. So we had a real diverse family when it was not really that kind of a thing to do back then.
That's amazing, and I love the fact that you guys are all. I assume we're all still family, right? I mean,
Oh yeah, absolutely. And family to us does not conjure up the idea that you are related by blood at all, because we're not. And I'm related to Grandma by blood and not Grandpa. It's funny, people will say, oh, so he's not really your grandfather. Or they'll say to everybody else, oh, she's not really your grandmother. And it's like, no, our family, that's just our family. And I get it, because people kind of want to put things in categories and see where everything belongs. And it's a very confusing family, but that's the way we are.
Yeah. Look, my dad was married and had a son. Vanna's mom is my mom, and she was married before and had Vanna. And then when my dad and mom got together, they had me. So we have, like with the old movie, his, hers, and ours, right?
Yep.
My brother grew up in Utica with his mother and stepfather, and I didn't get to meet him till I was probably, 13 or 14. He was 18. Dad didn't even get to meet him till then because of circumstances. And we are very, we're close now. And I love my brother, and he's my brother. And Van and I grew up together. And I remember the first time we were going to go to New York City and meet her dad. My dad took me for a drive in the car to tell me the story. I'm like, okay, whatever, it's like, that's Madam, it's my sister,
Yeah.
and we went to New York and met her father for the first time. But she has always called, Herbert, her dad. And of course, Mom's always been my mom. That's just the way life is. I mean,
Right.
that's our family.
Yep, that's our family too. Very confusing, but loud and wonderful, and I wouldn't trade anybody for anything.
What was it like? You sent me some great photos, which we'll put on the website under your episode, of you as a baby with your grandparents, you as a teenager. What was it like? Roy Rogers had restaurants and a drink named after him. What was it like being, the granddaughter of the singing cowboy?
I think maybe it's best described that whatever you grow up with and whatever your normal is, you just figure everybody's normal is that for a while anyway, when you're really young. Like, we used to watch the Roy Rogers show, the reruns, with Grandpa on the floor of the family room there at their ranch. And I just thought everybody's grandfather had a TV show, and this was just normal. And it wasn't until I was in second grade, I wrote about this in my first book, Your Heroes, My Grandparents, that my teacher called me up to the desk when I was in second grade, and everyone was working quietly, and she pointed to the stack of Scholastic News that was on her desk and said, "Julie, do you know who this is?" And I thought, that was confusing to me. I answered very respectfully, like, yes, that's my grandfather. But in my heart, I was thinking, why are you acting so weird about this? And when I went home, I asked my parents a lot of questions, and I started to realize, not everybody has a grandparent that does the things my grandparents do. And I did notice that we would go out with them, and people would stop and stare or point or come up or take pictures or want an autograph. Obviously not from any of us, but I just thought that was a normal thing. And we just got used to that. And so when I found out, it is kind of different, then I started with a lot of questions. I really had a lot of questions, but they didn't treat themselves or our family or anything differently than they were just grandma and grandpa. And that's really who you saw on the screen was who you really hoped they would be in real person. That's who they were. And that was the nice thing about them, because they were very accessible and very real and authentic in who they were.
Yeah, they definitely had this persona, and like you were saying, it seems like they took kind of lives separately that had some messes to them, and combined and found this relationship, this life that this works for us together, and we can share this life. And make it bigger than life, to a point like, hey, I'm a singing cowboy, and you're the beautiful singing cowgirl, and now we've got this vehicle that works for the family.
Right. Well, what was nice and fun for us was that we could kind of go in and out of their celebrity. When we were with them, we experienced some really amazing things. We got to be on TV. We got to be on commercials. We got to do, go and watch them perform. Just a lot of really fun things, and meet a lot of different people, really fun people in the business and entertainment. But we could go home and then live our normal lives. So we had the best of both worlds. I mean, they didn't mind. I mean, they knew that came with the territory, but they did not have a lot of privacy, because of, them being in the public eye. But we did. So we kind of got both.
Now, the private life of you, what was your household like, and where did your career go? You said my students call me Mrs. P. So
Yeah.
tell me about Julie. I mean, again, I'm going to tell everybody, please Google Roy Rogers and Dale Evans. You will be amazed. Now let's talk about a little bit, and we're going to talk about your books, but let's talk a little bit about who Julie is.
Well, when I was growing up, when I got to the age of where I was graduating from high school, in my era, I guess, it was never a question, are you going to college? It was, which college are you going to go to? And now things have kind of opened up and people realize, hey, you don't necessarily have to go to college, the traditional college. You can go to a different kind of schooling for this business or whatever, or not even go to schooling, and you could probably make more than I do as a school teacher. But I went into school teaching because it was my dad's profession and my mom's profession, and they were both music teachers too, and very involved in music. And it was the only thing that I thought was that I should do. I didn't really think much about it. What I really loved, and I loved it from when I was little, was all the behind the scenes things in movies and TV shows. I would have done really well, and I really wanted to. There was a time, when I was my second year of college, I wanted to switch and be like, something like a set dresser or a set construction or something behind the camera, because I'm creative minded and I just love that kind of stuff. But it wasn't, my dad had seen the negative side of Hollywood, and neither one of my parents really they kind of gently pushed me in the other direction. If I were who I am today, I probably would have gone into that business behind the camera somehow. But I've had a little bit of it.
Yeah, that's a tough profession, and you can. I was in it for 35 years before I started doing podcasting, and not that I'm getting rich podcasting either, but man, it was definitely feast or famine in the film and TV world. And
oh yeah, it's not an easy life, to be sure. And my dad definitely saw firsthand that. And teaching has been really good to me, and I love children, and I've been doing it over 30 years, and this is my last year. And I'm finally retiring, and I'm looking forward to that too. So I'll have more time to do, these other things. So. Well,
once you've retired, you're still young enough. You can look, set decorating and construction part's a little harder, but design, set decorating, it's other than the long hours and the, hurry up and wait and the rush, it's something you can still do. And
I still have a lot of contacts, and it's fun. And I, who knows what's gonna happen.
Yeah. And I remember when you said, talking about teaching, when I started DJing right out I was in college and dropping out because I'm like, I'm making more money DJing than my teacher.
Yeah.
The hell with that. Had I only known the stupidity on my end, I should have stayed. But you learn, you live and you learn.
Yeah.
Were you fascinated by horses on the ranch? Are you a big horse rider? Was that something that?
I am. Yeah, and I have to say, I that's largely, if not 100%, due to Grandpa. He kept Trigger at the house, and when I was right after he was retired, the horse was, and so whenever we'd go there every Friday night for dinner, there was this one corner, we'd turn around, we'd come around, because they owned 300 acres. It was a long country drive to actually get to their house on their property, and we would pass the barn on the way. And so we had this game, my sisters and I, of, is Trigger going to be inside the barn or outside the barn? And we'd all guess. And we'd round the corner, and then I'd see Trigger, and I'd get so excited. And the first time that Grandpa asked me if I wanted to get on Trigger, because he would put us on Trigger and ride us around and the corral. I was still 3, almost 4, and I remember it really, really well because I remember him coming in and asking if I wanted to go down to the barn and see Trigger, and it was like, yeah, of course. And my dad went down with me and him, and my dad had his camera, and Grandpa lifted me up. He got an old saddle. He wasn't all in his really nice, show clothes, but he got a saddle and he put me on him. And my dad stepped back and took a picture, and they were smiling and laughing and talking to me. But the whole time I'm thinking, where's your horse, and are we going to go anywhere? Is this all? Is this it? We're just going to stand here? And I felt so comfortable on Trigger. He was such a great horse. He knew when kids were on him, and he just knew to be like a rock. And I had no fear at all of horses after my experience growing up with Trigger. The first time I was bucked off a horse as an adult, then I realized, oh yeah, horses they're pretty strong.
Yeah.
But that's exactly why we have horses, and the horses that we have are Palominos. Shocker. I just am partial to Palominos. And one of our horses is actually the great-grandson of Trigger's stunt double. And one of his stunt doubles was, his name was Pal, P-A-L. And this horse's name was Pal. And we started talking to the owner, when we went out to go see him. And he said, yeah, you probably don't know who this is, but there was an old cowboy named Roy Rogers, and I'm going, are you kidding me? So, yeah, it was interesting. So, and he's a real character, like the stunt double was. A lot of people don't know there were stunt doubles because Ray didn't want to break that magic of Roy and Trigger, but. Lassie had a stunt double, and Champion, Gene Autry's horse, had a stunt double. You all have to have them because you can't afford to let them get hurt. Even Bullet, the dog, had a stunt double.
Yeah. That's all I can think about is Murders in the Building with Steve Martin.
Oh yeah,
just stunt double, and thinking, here's the horse coming up to Trigger, talking about in horse talk about.
Yeah.
Remember that movie we did? Da, 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 da.
Oh, it's really in this new book that I have. I went out on a limb, and I am adding a picture. It's a coffee table book, so it's all pictures. And I put a picture in there of all of the stunt doubles of Trigger lined up. And I figure it's been long enough now that, adults won't get traumatized, I don't think, by realizing there were stunt doubles, because that's just the way the business was. And it's a smart way to go.
Oh, absolutely.
But Trigger, the old man was his special. There was something special about the old man, the original Trigger, and no one ever took his place. No horse.
That's now, how many Triggers were there?
Well, there were, in the picture that I have, there were 7, but they only used 2 others mostly for Trigger. They had Trigger Jr. and they had Little Trigger. They used Little Trigger for a lot. Trigger Jr. was mostly the dancing. When they needed someone, of course, dance. But Little Trigger was in a lot of different movies after the TV show. And he was in Son of Paleface with Bob Hope and Grandpa. And he was in bed with Bob Hope, and he kept stealing the covers. And Bob Hope didn't realize he was in bed with a horse. And he kept thinking that, I don't know who he thought it was, but he kept stealing the covers back, and they had this back and forth thing, and it was pretty goofy, just kind of a silly movie, but kind of fun.
Yeah, good humor. I asked this question a lot, and from our conversation, I think I might know the answer, but what did your childhood smell like?
Well, it smelled like horses. Is that what you really, you mean literally? Because it did. And you know what? Every time I go in the barn, our barn or anybody's barn, it takes me back to when I was a little girl, and it just gives me this settled, really grounded feel. because it just reminds me of growing up. It reminds me of the smell of going in and seeing Trigger and of Grandpa and just the whole scene, because he was truly a horseman. He wasn't just playing one on TV.
And that answered the question exactly like I thought it would. That's awesome. Okay, so you've been a teacher for 35 years. Uh-huh. What's the biggest lesson a student has taught you?
The biggest lesson I learned was by former students that I had when they were in kindergarten, first, second grade, when they would come back to me as an adult and say, "You really had an impact on my life." And it really stuck with me that, wow, what I am doing really affects long-term the growth of children growing up into adulthood, and how important a teacher's role really is, not just teaching math and all the subjects, but your example to them and how important that was. And then it brought me back around to connecting that with the fact that my grandparents realized their role was important in the role model that they played for children. So they didn't just take acting as a job. They took it as a real, sincere goal, and I can't think of the word, but they wanted children to see that there was authenticity behind what they were trying to teach the children.
Right. They were living what they were saying. They weren't just.
They were living what they were saying, and I feel very grateful and blessed that I happened to be born into this family, which was no feat of my own, and that actually brought me around. This is very sorry. I'm getting other thoughts that branch off, and I kind of, squirrel. Sorry.
Go for it. I love squirrels.
For a while, I didn't want my friends to know that I was Roy Rogers and Dale Evans' granddaughter, because my girlfriends, who can be a little, girls in particular, I've noticed from teaching, can be a little more catty sometimes than boys. Boys are just out there, and they just, if they don't like you, they sock you in the stomach, and there it is, Yeah.
And then they become friends. It's like, okay, let's move on.
Yeah. But girls can be very mean. And there was a time I went through where girls said, "Oh, she just thinks she's somebody special because she's related to somebody famous." And they would talk about me, and people that didn't know me, girls in particular, wouldn't want to get to know me because they just assumed that I was this awful person who just was very, to use the old-fashioned term, stuck up, like we used to say. Mm-hmm. And that hurt my feelings a lot because that wasn't me. And so for a while, I sort of hid that fact because I didn't want anybody to know. But then as I was learning my life lessons and realizing I was going into a vocation that was very similar to theirs, because you're in front of an audience, right? So you're in front of a class, and you are not just teaching them subjects, but you're teaching them how to live and what kind of a person to be. And it all came full circle for me, and I was very proud of that and of them. And so it changed. And and as I've gotten older, I've been more vocal about it because I feel like they really had something to share that is still valuable. It's not outdated, the kinds of lessons that they taught.
Well, absolutely. And they were great people, and it's okay. I mean, I think it's wonderful that you lean into it and now and help keep their love and life alive. And yeah. My son's sixth grade teacher, he came home from school one day and he goes, "Mom, Dad," I can't remember the teacher's name. She had sat us down today and got all the boys together and said, "I'm going to tell you about the meanest creature in the world." And all the boys are thinking werewolves and, whatever, And she looks them all dead in the eye and she goes, "Seventh grade girls, they're going to destroy you boys, but you're strong, you can make it."
That's funny.
And I
That's
thought,
really.
yeah, we still laugh about that. What do you think is the greatest lesson, life lesson you've taught a student that has maybe come back and said, oh my God, that one thing you said or did has stuck with me for life?
I think the biggest thing that I taught them that I didn't realize I was teaching them is to be honest, but be kind. And you balance those two. If you're honest and kind, that is a good combination because you're not fake, and you're not too harsh. Because if you're honest but you're not kind, that doesn't turn out well a lot of times. And she said just the life lessons that you would bring in to your lessons, your math lessons and your ELA and your writing lessons and things like that. The lessons that you taught us that I remember are the stories you told us of your family and of growing up and what you learned and the mistakes you made. And she remembered so much about my personal life. I mean, I didn't share a lot of personal stuff, but enough so that kids felt like they really knew me. And that made a difference in how I viewed teaching. It's a very important job that I think we don't really, I don't know, we don't really think enough of.
I agree. I had the opportunity of going to my sister's 50th high school reunion recently, last year or so, and my algebra teacher was there, Mr. Steve West, and I'm pulling this out and said, Mr. West, I know I was a pain in the ass in class, and I really didn't think I was learning, but I want you to know that you have stuck with me all my life, and I'm grateful that what you taught. And I've come back to a couple of other teachers through my life, and as you said, boys are boys, and we're kind of pricks sometimes, and we're whatever. But teachers need to know, like, we remember, and we are sorry for some of the things that we did in class.
Yeah, it's just really important who you are and how you live, and how you treat people. And I think that's always a lesson now, especially. It's always important how we treat people, and it's never changed. But it's still a life lesson that I think Roy and Dale were very cutting edge on how they believed and how they treated people and their multicultural family. And they also were huge voices in changing the whole landscape of what people believed about special needs children, because they had a special needs child. And before that, people hid them away and put them in homes and institutions. And when they had Robin, the doctors said, well, where are you going to put her? And Grandpa was like, what do you mean, where are we going to put her? We're taking her home.
Yeah.
And they said, no, you do this, you do that. And he was like, no, are you kidding? And so they were very proud of her, and they brought her out in public, or at least photos of her. She wasn't always well enough to come out in public, but they were not embarrassed of her. They shared her stories. They just changed the whole idea of how to treat people, and especially children with special needs, that they need love just like everybody else.
Absolutely. I have friends that have special need kids, and they're now growing into adults or are adults, and it's phenomenal the humans the amazing humans they've become, adults. And
yeah. Well, and they touch people. She changed our whole family. My Uncle Dusty and my Aunt Cheryl always say that. She changed the whole family in the way that they just became kinder and more thoughtful and just more caring. And Grandpa used to start to notice that people were coming out, bringing their special needs kids to his rodeos. And they started coming out in droves. I mean, there were lots of them. And so he would go to the promoters of every place that they would go do a show and say, I want you specifically to say the first couple of rows for families with special needs kids or relatives or whatever. And then he and Grandma would side pass on their horses at the end of the show and make sure they went and shook hands with every one of those families at the end, before they left the arena. And it was an important change.
The world needs more Roy and Dales. Remember that, people. We need more Roys and Dales. We don't need more fighting.
Yeah.
Before we get to the last question, tell me quickly about the book you've written and the book that you're writing.
The book I wrote, first of all, was called Your Heroes, My Grandparents, A Granddaughter's Love. And I wrote it for my sons. I wrote it for posterity. It was just going to be a mom gift at Christmas time. I was going to go bind it at Kinko's, And the more I go out to these Western festivals, which I've done for a lot of years, people would say, oh, you have so many great stories, you need to write a book. And I got to thinking, well, I am writing a book, but I'm just giving it to my sons. And then it sort of broadened the audience, and I started considering, well, maybe I should get it published. Well, I don't know, would anybody read it? Well, they have, and they are. And it's just short stories, 2 and 3 pages of memories that I have of conversations or things, places we went, funny things, lots of funny things, some things that, make you kind of want to tear up. Just life. And I really am glad I wrote it. I did write it for my sons, and they did get it for Christmas that year, even though it wasn't on their list. And then my publisher said, Julie, you have too many pictures. We can't take any more pictures in this book. So that's what got me started on the second book, because it's just a picture book. I have hundreds of pictures at home, and they're just sitting up in the attic. And so I'm using those pictures and putting them into a picture book of 300 pictures and captions and trivia. And I think it's a really fun book.
That's awesome. We need to get you down to San Antonio to the rodeo,
Oh, I'd love that. I love San Antonio. My grandparents did too. I actually have a picture of him rearing on Trigger in front of the Alamo, and they used to love going down there. My grandma was from Texas, actually.
Well, I'm not. My wife's the Texan, but we're in San Antonio now. We would love to have you at the San Antonio rodeo. As my guest. I don't know what the rodeo says, but you can come be my guest.
That would be very fun. We'd love that.
The last question is, what question did I not ask you that you wish I had asked? Or is there a question that no one ever asked you? It's like, God, why doesn't someone ever ask me about blah?
That's hard to say, because the 3 questions they always ask is Trigger really stuffed? Yes and no. He is not stuffed, but he's mounted. Did you know them? I mean, did you know your grandparents? I guess that's a common question. Well, it is. And is what's his name? Related? Clint Black related to Grandpa? No, he's not.
Because he looks kind of like him? Is that why people think he might?
He looks a lot like him.
I know he does, but yeah, okay.
There was a while when Clint and his wife wanted to play Roy and Dale. They were talking about making him, and they would
Heather,
be great,
right?
but then it took so long, as it so many times takes 7-8 years for something to even get from the writing stage to even, shopping it around, that it didn't happen because they got too old for the.
Yeah.
Sorry, Lisa.
They aged out, as they say.
Yeah, they aged out a bit, and there wasn't anybody else. But you know what? I can't really think, because the questions you asked were, or are asking, are very thoughtful questions. I don't always get those. You usually get the same ones, and which is fine, because I'm comfortable with talking about it. But you asked some thought-provoking questions.
Well, thank you. I try to make it different, just because I want to know. I mean, I ask things that I want to know, and let the conversation.
Well, and there is life beyond the celebrity of your family. I just happened to be born into a family that everybody was watching. They weren't watching me, but they were watching my family, specifically my grandparents and my aunts and uncles. And because of that, I feel like I have a real desire to want to elongate their, what they brought to us and educate people on who they were, because I think what they have to say, what they had to say back then, is still relevant for today.
Absolutely.
So that's why, yeah.
Donny Osmond's son, on his episode, we were talking about, kind of when the applause fades and how do you deal with that, and what can you do to, again, keep something going. It's the Roy Rogers, as we talked about on the phone brief, that the original fans of Roy and Dale are much older and passing, and how do you there's nobody. I mean, like my book, it's hard. My audience, my target audience, is senior living homes and gun shows. And that's just the way it is, And I'm hoping that the coffee table book sort of draws people in a little bit more, because I have lots of other celebrities that are, side stories that are kind of interesting. Yeah.
And yeah.
So, well, I'm going to challenge my audience, the younger generation, to look up Dale and Roy, find the book, learn something from their way of life and the lessons that they tried to instill upon the youth of the world. Julie, I thank you for your time today. It was fabulous.
Very fun. I'd love to come on again if I missed anything. I'll have to think of that question. What did you not ask me? So we'll have to cover that next time.
Absolutely. And God willing, the creek don't rise. You know what? You come to San Antonio for whatever reason, and we'll bring you into the studio and we'll do another episode in person. I love doing those. Julie, thank you for your time today.
Thank you for having me. Happy trails. That's what we
Happy
say.
trails. Oh, I love that. I forgot. Happy trails to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was fun and educational for me. I hope it was for you too. I've always been a big fan of Trigger and Roy and Dale and the Singing Cowboy. I want to thank you, the viewer. I want to thank Julie for taking her time to be with us. I want to thank you, the viewer and the listener, for taking your time to listen, to watch. I'm humbled that you would share your time with me, and I'm grateful for that. I want to thank Nelco Comics for the amazing comic book location. If you're looking for a good comic book, check them out online or come into San Antonio to the shop. Nelco Media, our producers. I want to thank visitmyrtlebeach.com, my hometown area, for their support of Relatively Famous. Again, that's visitmyrtlebeach.com. You heard Julie talk about her special needs, Roy's special needs daughter. So if you have a special needs or an autistic or sensory sensitive traveler with you, check out Traveling the Spectrum, and then also check into visitmyrtlebeach.com of how to make your vacation more special with your special needs traveler. If you happen to be related to someone famous or know someone related to someone famous, please reach out to me. I'm always looking for guests at podcastrelativelyfamous@gmail.com, podcastrelativelyfamous@gmail.com. Until then, I'm going to borrow a line from Roy. Happy trails.
You've been listening to Relatively Famous with Chip White. Please like and subscribe to Relatively Famous with Chip White.